And those layers of skin and tissue and everything, they are just hiding what you need to uncover. So when you write to the bone, you're unlocking everything that you've suppressed and you're unlocking your authentic self. Just to play onto this metaphor, you have to take off that band aid, unravel it, and reveal the cuts that you attempted to hide. You have to let them bleed out. You have to release the trauma and write the things you've suppressed. Hello, my loves. Welcome back. So, today we're getting straight into the psych talk, okay? Psych, but this time I have a new perspective that we're going to add to our reflection and to our application of self growth concepts because I'm actually taking a couple English courses this year. And when I tell you, they have just a completely different perspective. While psychology is so factual and concrete, like one thing that psychology kind of lacks, and research even talks about this, it lacks the dimensional aspect and just a bit of creativity. Everything is really cookie cutter and you're just trying to fit into a mold in psych. That's how you're analyzing the world. You're analyzing based on criteria. Whereas now, taking this English course, I'm taking creative writing and I'm taking a visual arts, visual culture class. And the way that I'm perceiving the world, it's like I'm able to reflect on so many different things, like not just psychological things and scientific things. And it's so refreshing. It's just so refreshing. So, we're going to get into how art and psychology are going to help you on your journey of self growth and self development, and how you need to unlock your artistic side. You don't need to be a realist all the time. You don't need to be a scientist all the time. You need to give your soul some sort of creative outlet that lets you get out of the box in your thinking and in your application and perception of the world. You know that journaling is such a big part of healing, of growth, of understanding yourself, and it's such an important thing in life to understand yourself. So that's why writing is part of the healing process. Now, writing, it just has so much depth and vulnerability to it, and it kind of feels like a risk, the same type of risk that falling in love has. It has that component of vulnerability, and we fear it. But fear is our biggest op in 2026. We have to overcome our fear because you want to be yourself, but you fear showing up as your authentic self. You fear everything that you've suppressed. And it's because you're scared that you're not going to be accepted. You're scared of rejection deep down. So, in my creative writing class, I read this text by Natalie Goldberg, and it was titled Writing to the Bones. Now, this is a metaphor, but basically, Natalie, like many others, just like you and I, entered her adult life with some subconscious biases that she created based on the criticism that she received in her childhood, and she brought those with her into adulthood. And that's what we all do. So it's just about finding out what those criticisms are that you adopted as beliefs of the self and unlearning them. But how do we do that? We have to do that through writing and reflection. So these criticisms that she got in her childhood, they caused her to suppress her passions throughout her whole life. So I'll just briefly explain the story. It went something along the lines of her being told that she didn't have a good tone or pitch in singing, and even though she really loved singing, she just stopped singing for the rest of her life. So she buried that passion. And this suppression is also explained in that same text. She describes a different story where students were forbidden from taking notes in class because your brain only accepts what it wants and suppresses the rest. So if you're taking notes, you're just accepting certain bits and pieces and you're suppressing the rest. And that's how we move through life as well. So, Natalie uses this metaphor of writing down the bones because the bones are the deepest parts of ourselves. They're covered in layers and layers and layers, but when you get to that deepest part of the bone, that's your most authentic and true self. It's just covered by so many other things. And those layers of skin and tissue and everything, they are just hiding what you need to uncover. So, when you write to the bone, you're unlocking everything that you've suppressed and you're unlocking your authentic self. So just to play onto this metaphor, you have to take off that band aid, unravel it, and reveal the cuts that you attempted to hide. You have to let them bleed out. You have to release the trauma and write the things you've suppressed, the things that you've been too scared to say out loud, the things that people have made you feel like you're not allowed to feel or say. Write it all down. And that's how you unlock true self awareness. And that's how you're going to start making connections and really just releasing all of that mental filtering and all of that mental clutter. Now, a little psychological connection here. Now, another class I'm taking, human memory, a psychology class, and we learn about memory cues, how in our long-term memory storage, sometimes we will not remember or like a memory will not come to our consciousness until something triggers it, like a simple cue. All right. And when you're writing, you will be able to trigger certain memories. And although they're things that you may not have wanted to be conscious of, you have to connect the dots and you have to organize all that mental clutter and work through all those mental filters, the biases that you've been guiding your life with. So start writing, trigger those cues, those memories. Let them rise, let yourself process them, and unlock that new level of self awareness. Because what happens if you don't write and trigger this stream of thought? You're going to be filled with just unsolved puzzles mentally. Now, following this, you also have to realize that suffering is an artistic trait, okay? And maybe in your childhood, as a teen, you identified as an artistic person, and maybe you lost that along the way, but you are an artist, okay? You have creativity flowing through you. And when you have a sort of hyper awareness and you understand things on an emotional level where you're aware, it's likely that you have a lot of empathy. But this empathy can also just feel so consuming. And it's almost like it can make you feel like you're drowning because you don't know how to guide your life with all of these feelings and all of this awareness of every little perspective. Like, if you classify yourself as an overthinker, you are just hyper aware and you're constantly emotionally processing everything around you. And it's extremely draining, but it's also beautiful because that pain and that interpretation and perception of the world can create the most beautiful art. And a lot of authors, they actually talk about how being an artist and a creative person, being a writer, it's a painful process because it actually means that you feel things very deeply and you perceive the world on a very emotional and aware level. So basically, all creative people have experienced pain. I mean, everyone's experienced pain, but if you are experiencing something, I guarantee you can translate that into something creative. You need to have an outlet. The next concept is that comparison is actually the thief of healing. I know you often hear that comparison is a thief of joy, but it can also cause you to feel less than, I guess you could say, and to make you feel like your problems are less than when you compare it to others. So that's why I think that you should never compare yourself to others in any context, but especially in the context of how much someone else is able to complete productivity wise and maybe how they are able to show up in difficult times of their life because you don't really know the full story and no one knows your full story. So when you compare yourself to others in terms of how you're able to show up, you can almost degrade yourself and degrade your problems when your problems are impacting you. But you're trying so hard to convince yourself that your problems are so little and they're not a big deal, but you have to give yourself grace. An example is that this year, in my last semester that just finished, I was able to work my part time job. I was able to go to uni. Like, I had a very busy schedule with no days off. Uni Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then working Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then on top of that, working on my content, my personal brand, and going to the gym, just creating a proper routine for myself. I was very booked and busy. But although I was able to show up to that degree and accomplish what I needed to accomplish, and I was able to handle the stress and able to handle so many things on my plate, that same time last year, I was not able to handle that much. In fact, I literally had to quit my job because I was so stressed and I wasn't able to handle what was going on in my life. So that's why I think it's so important to just recognize what stage you're at and what you're able to handle and just take it day by day. Give yourself the grace that you need because I needed that break last year, whereas maybe this year I didn't. I was able to just push through this year. So that's why you just need to stop comparing yourself. Give yourself what you need to grow and to level up. And if rest and, taking a step back and just analyzing your life and what you're putting yourself through and what you're being put through, take that analysis and work with that. And I mean, the hardships that I was going through at that time are completely different than what I'm going through now. And the hardships that I had gone through from then to now also prepared me to handle this much stress and to be able to take on more responsibility, to be able to grind it out and have no days off. I'm only able to do that now because I pushed through a really difficult season before and I gained resilience, I gained strength, and I gained a higher tolerance to stress. So push through those rough seasons, push through the stressful times, because then in your next season, you'll be able to handle so much more and you'll be able to take on and accept more opportunity, more success, and more progress towards your goals. So don't beat yourself up for feeling burnt out because your burnout now is going to prepare you for a later acceptance of more on your plate that you're going to be able to handle. And on the topic of comparison, in psychology, we have upward comparison and downward comparison. So, upward comparison is comparing yourself to something better, someone better, and downward comparison would be comparing yourself to someone who's maybe not at the same point as you. So, that would kind of just feed your ego, I guess. But if you're just comparing to yourself, even comparing to different seasons. It could be either direction. You could be comparing to a worse point or to a better point in your life. But you have to recognize that maybe things have shifted for you. And if you feel like you're not doing as well as you could be doing, then yeah, use that comparison to fuel a change, a rebrand, like fixing your lifestyle, fixing your habits. So basically, to sum it all up, just start writing. Psychology wants you to get out all of these suppressed things. Psychology wants you to understand yourself and the root cause and the suppressed beliefs of the self. Psychology wants you to do this, the scientific perspective, okay? But then from the artist's perspective, the writers, the creatives, they also say you need to write. You need to let that emotion and that pain flow, okay? Because it's going to uncover a lot for you. Reflection, it's so powerful, but it can also create something beautiful too. You never know. Like this channel, for example, okay? Um, I literally just get vulnerable on here. I share what I'm going through, I share my journey, I share what I'm journaling about, what I'm writing about, and it's created something beautiful. So just don't be scared to write. Let go of your fear, start writing, just get the pen, get the paper, and like also physically write that sensory experience. That's really going to unlock something for you. Anyways, I hope you guys can be free from the realist perspective. Rip the band aid off, let it flow, unwrap the layers, and get down to the bones. So start writing and unblocking all of those mental filters that you have put up so that you can really see who you truly are and so that you can unlock your authentic self and meet a new version of yourself. Thank you for coming to this session and we'll chat soon. Bye.